What's going on, guys?
Hey,
Hey,
but
you guys ready to rock and roll?
I think so.
Okay, let's start this off. Let's get it going. What did we? I know that the topic was being bounced around, but we are doing buyer presentations, right? With the new buyer presentation, so forth. And it's being recorded. So I was trying to give it a little more time for people to get on. We have 31 people on right now. Do you want to give it a couple minutes so we can let the? What was the official name of the topic? Because I know it went around and around.
I think it was. I was talking about obviously the new everything related to the NAR settlement, and then it sort of blended into being about I think buyer presentations, but obviously they're kind of intertwined. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to articulate your value and have that down, especially in this new era of real estate that we're going into. I think it's really important to be able to do that and explain not only how the process is going to work, but how we're going to be compensated and how that works. That's the big thing, right? Because there's a lot of unknowns. When there's unknowns, there's a lot of fear. And when there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety. And when there's a lot of anxiety, most people get paralyzed and step back and they don't move forward. So let's start it off. Maddie, why don't you start off? And my question to you concerning this, first of all, have you done any of these presentations yet? What are you using to do those presentations, and what type of reaction are you getting from buyers? I know you mostly deal with sellers, but I was just wondering if you've done any or gone over the forms with any buyers yet.
Yeah, I haven't gone over the new form. We used to use, back in the day, I never liked the car form that we used to use because it was so long. And so what we used in the past was we called it our VIP buyer. It was a VIP buyer agreement or something like that. And all it basically said is, this is like a 6 month thing contract between us, and you're not obligated to ever buy a home. But if you buy a home, you're going to go through us, and these are all the things we're going to do for you. We're going to get you pre-approved. We're going to send you properties. We're going to, help you and negotiate for you, and so on and so forth. And all we ask, again, you're not obligated to buy a home, and all we ask in return is your loyalty, right? Because we're going to work really hard, et cetera. What I love about this new settlement, and I'm actually Ross and I were talking about this the other day, you know, when this first happened, when we first heard about this settlement, everybody was, I think, kind of flipping out. Um, and now I look at this thing as like a gift, and
Yeah.
it's surprising to me that people are still, I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, are still looking at this settlement as a negative. I think it's an absolute positive because now, you know, a lot of us, for whatever reason, went a long time without signing buyers to buyers contracts, right? We always would sign buyers to listing agreements, but sellers to listing agreements, but we, for whatever reason, a lot of us just, it was just it seemed awkward to tell a buyer you have to sign this contract. Now we have to do it, right? So
Right.
this new settlement is forcing us to do it, which is awesome, right? And I think it's a great thing on the buyer side, and it's going to be a great thing on the listing side too, right? Because now I have sent out a few listing agreements to sellers, and I love saying to them, we charge 3%, and it's going to be 100% negotiable on what if anything, whatever you pay out to a buyer as far as a concession. And sellers love that. And at the end of the day, the beautiful thing is, in the old days before this settlement, when you had a buyer that wanted to buy a particular property, you were just basically locked in to whatever that seller was offering out, 2%, right? Whatever it was. Now we can go in there every single time and say, it's 3%. And I think in a lot of cases, the seller is going to, when they have an offer sitting in front of them, they're going to say, yeah, I'll pay out 3% or, whatever they're asking for if I get the offer that I want. And so I think it's going to be a real positive thing. But to get back to your question about, doing a buyer presentation, at the end of the day, the good thing about this settlement is it is going to force all of us by law now to sign every single buyer that we work with to a buyer's agreement. And, I was always, from the very get go, I was a listing agent and I was always told, buyers are liars and blah, blah, blah. And you want to be a listing agent. But the reality is if you got a qualified, motivated buyer, that's money in the bank. And it's a beautiful thing if you could stack up a bunch of them. So I think, this settlement, like I say, I think everybody was kind of freaked out about it initially, but I think it is just an overwhelming positive for all of us. And I'm a little, I know that everybody doesn't look at it that way, but I think I'm sure, I feel like anybody that looks at this whole settlement in a rational way, it's a slam dunk for all of us.
I agree with you. I think it's totally a slam dunk due to the fact that you have to know who you're working with, and you're not going to be an Uber or Lyft driver anymore, right? Because that's what most agents are. They're Uber and Lyft drivers, and they're shuttling people around and not getting paid for it because they hear the person say, "Hey, sorry, my neighbor put up a sign last night, and I walked over there in the middle of the night, and the other agent was there and said I could get a much better deal going with him. So that's what I did. Sorry about that. Sorry for wasting the last 4 months of your life driving me around every weekend." So I think that's a really good thing. I just don't know. I'm still a little unsure on how it's going to be enforced if somebody does do that. How is the enforcement on that? Does it go to mediation? Does it go to arbitration? Does it go to, do you have to sue somebody personally? I mean, does it go to civil court? What happens? Does anybody know?
Well, I think if you get into a situation where the car agreement has a cancellation clause, so does
Mm-hmm.
the our internal EXP brokerage um, buyer agreement. At the end
Yes.
of the day, it's always going to be up, on an individual basis. If a buyer literally tries to go around a buyer's broker, um, but I don't think that's going to happen very often, and I think it's going to be up to everybody if they want to go through the exercise of going through mediation and arbitration. I mean, I can't really imagine doing that, but at the same time, you know, I'm sure people will, but, you know, that was the case before too. That's not really, there's no
Right.
difference in this scenario now, but, um, anyway, I think it'll take us a little bit of time to get, comfortable with all these new forms and so forth. I wonder if anybody knows. So EXP has a form that is part of one of those new forms they came out with, which is direct compensation, which is like direct compensation from seller to a buyer's broker. And there's no car form like that. And it's basically, I think it's a form that you would send to uh, a seller prior to showing the property, saying, I'm going to show your property and I want, by the way, I have a buyer's agreement with my buyer and it's 3%. And they would just sign that and say, yeah, okay, I agree to pay you 3%. I don't think CAR or any of the Association of Realtors has a similar form, but that was one of the new forms that EXP sent out the other day.
And I
Have you
thought
Yeah, and
guys
about
seen that
that
one?
form, Matt.
yeah, and
I thought about
EXP
that
did.
form.
Go
Uh,
ahead, Russ.
Sorry, me and Matt were brainstorming on this form yesterday, and I think it'd be a great tool for cash buyers who want to whittle down their price point and not have our commission built into their sales price. So I think that would give them more leeway on the offering. And with a cash offer in hand, I think a seller would be more apt to give us a direct commission there. And I love that we have that option. So that way we're not having to always incorporate our commission into the price point. So I think that'd be a great tool for our cash buyers who are trying to work price points down in this market. But
Mm-hmm.
what a cool form to have, because if you send it beforehand, like Matt said it, or even if you're, in a listing appointment and trying to set precedent, like, hey, we can offer commission to a great buyer agent, and it can be outside of the price in this fashion. It's just another option for us to present to our clients. I think that's a cool form. Thanks for bringing that up, Matt.
No, that's great, and that's what Randy was saying too. I mean, Randy's not on right now. I think he's listening, but he's over in Paris cheering on the Polish national team. in the Olympics. And he was saying that there's a direct form for compensation from the seller to the agent, to the buyer's agent, which is pretty cool. I think it's just going to take a little time for everybody to get used to this process, but I think it's going to really delineate lines of representation, and you're going to have to articulate what your value is and what your track record is and what your relationships are and how you find properties and how committed you are to that client and that it's a team effort and so forth, and really explain to them how it works. Otherwise, I think you're going to run into problems. What do you think, Cam? What are you seeing out there with the next gen agents? Cam's all across the nation. In full disclosure, you guys, every state is not the same when it comes to the forms or the compensation package to buyers and sellers. So make sure you check in with your state broker and the forms that you guys have for each individual state. That's just my full disclosure for this mastermind, so everybody isn't blowing me up after saying, oh, that form's not used here. A lot of us are in California, so we're talking about California forms, but Cam, as you can tell by his fantastic tan, is in Florida. So Cam, tell us about what's happening with the next gen agents around the nation and how they are navigating this changeover that's going to happen approximately in almost a week.
Yeah, it's a great question. And good morning, everybody. For the West Coast folks, good morning. For us on the other coast, it's afternoon. Great question, great topic. Obviously, this is going to be huge changes for all of us. I want everyone to step back though for a second and get away from what Matt was just saying, that fear, that anxiety, that uncertainty, and actually look at this as it is, just face value. This is incredible, you guys. This allows us to negotiate our commissions with the seller. Something beforehand was like, oh my gosh, if you tried to do this in the previous years, you felt like the bad guy always. You'd go in and they were offering 1% or $500 and you'd ask for more and you really stand out if you were doing that. Well, now every single transaction is going to be that way. So it gives us the ability to earn what we are rightfully owed, in my opinion, right? Being the agent, like Matt says, when you got the buyer ready to buy, you got the cash, man. You got the power. Really, that's really the truth, is when you got the buyer that's ready to go, you got the power. And now that we have the ability to lean on that a little bit, we can start asking for more, and we can start earning what I believe is owed to us, being a buyer's agent, doing all that work, doing the Uber, right? Showing all those homes, doing all that. Now you can get paid fairly. Let's talk about buyer presentations though, right? That's the idea of this call today, buyer presentations. I'm going to go super basic because I've been talking with a lot of agents that they need the basics. They're asking questions like, well, where do I meet these guys to do this, right? Like, let's talk about the basic stuff. So being that obviously we're at this incredible virtual brokerage, we don't have the brick and mortars like some brokerages do. We do obviously have tons and tons of EXP offices across the country, as well as Regus suites for that availability, but we don't have the traditional brokerage, the traditional brokerage thing. So where are you guys meeting them? And for me, and for the past, because I've been lucky enough that I started obviously in 2008, 2009, when it was a little more challenging, a lot like what we're seeing today, different markets, changing markets, and commissions were being, varied back and forth at the time. Some builders were offering $500. Some people were offering 4%. It was all very different. So when I started my career here, I was trained and I was coached on always having everything in writing. Buyer broker agreements I have used from day one. And just because, Matt, like you said, buyers are, and if you have them under contract, you have a much less chance of having that happen to you. And almost every single time that I didn't do my due diligence and didn't get the agreement signed, guess what happened? I got burned. And that's why after that a couple of times, it's like, well, I know this is here. I've been using it before. I'm coached on it. People say to do it. I need to start doing it. So I have been using them for a very long time. And what I have found is buyers want representation. But what's important, you guys, is how you present it to them. Okay. If you say, you got to sign this because I can't do anything unless you sign it, they're going to go, ooh, gross. I don't want to be tied into somebody that says they won't help me versus, hey guys, this is giving me the ability to represent you just like your doctor. I'm going to be on your best interest. I'm going to keep your secrets. I'm going to work for you and only you in this transaction. That's what you want, right? Yes, of course. That's what we want. That's what we want, baby. We want representation. We want someone to fight for us. We want someone to get in the ring and box with the other guy and end up with us getting us the best deal. And that's if you present it to them, your clients that way, you guys, you are going to find that they have no problem doing this. I've been doing it, like I said, almost 15 years now with buyer broker agreements. I get no pushback on this. Now, I did used to do it, so I'd give them the first one free, meaning that the first day, the first showings, they got flavor for me. They got to see what I was all about. They got to see my energy. They got to see it all. And at the end of that, at the very last showing, I'd say, hey guys, just so you know, I work with everybody under contract just so that I can represent you like a doctor, like an attorney. I am representing you and only you, but I need to have that sign. Is that a problem for you? And it's something that's required. And 99% of the time, they had no problem with it. So back to the basics, you guys. You are going to be the expert here. You are telling your clients what you want them to expect. You're telling them what you want them to know. You're telling them how it is because you are the professional. Now, if you don't know how it's supposed to be, if you don't know how it is, that's obviously why you're in these classes and you're learning from us, because that is our jobs being team leaders, brokers, obviously top producers, is we spend the time, we gain the knowledge so that we can help you guys. But you need to have the confidence that you can go in and tell these clients exactly how it's working, what's going on, and that you expect them to sign this if they're going to be working for you. And it's going to be a benefit for them. Now, where do you meet them? Very simple, guys. Starbucks, Panera Breads, Dunkin' Donuts, anywhere that you can meet before you go out and show the properties, because you legally need to have this signed before you go do that. And I always just like to say now, this is what I'm teaching. I haven't done it yet because, like I said, it's just started here a few weeks ago with this. Traditionally, it was at the end of my first day showings, but this is how it's going to go. Hey, John, hey, Carol, super excited about showing you guys these properties today. I just wanted to meet with you for 15 or 20 minutes before we got started. And, we're going to meet at this property. But before we do that, I need to sit down with you and just explain to you the changes that are going on. Let's meet at Panera at, let's say the appointments are 12:30. Let's meet at Panera at 12:15. It's right down the road from the first showing. How does that sound to you guys? Simple as that, right? You're just asking them. Yeah. You're telling them that you need to do this. It's required. And you're just going to meet them a few minutes before your showing start. That way you can still get everything prepared and you're ready to go, but you're still doing what's legally required, which is getting the client under contract prior to showing. Like I said, I'm really excited because you're no longer the bad guy for asking for more commissions. I'm telling you guys, listing agents used to hate when I would come in and ask for an additional 1% or 1.5% because they weren't offering the same commissions. So that is going to be, huge for us, is being able to ask that ability to ask for what you want to be owed. Now, they're going to sign it. They're going to start working with you under a buyer broker agreement. The next step or the next question, and this is something that I wanted to have an open discussion with. I know we only have an hour today, but a small, quick open discussion on how are we making sure that the sellers are willing to offer concessions, or how are they offering concessions? Or in Matt's case, maybe they're not, but how are we confirming that they're offering concessions prior to showing their houses? I do not have the secret, or I don't have the explanation to that. Hopefully someone's going to touch on it here in a little bit because I'm very excited to learn what these top producers on this call are doing. I do believe it's going to increase our workload as buyers agents. We're going to have to do more upfront work to make sure the homes that we're showing qualify for our buyer. Because remember, if they can't qualify to purchase the home, it's not fair. It's not ethical to show our buyers a home that they just simply can't qualify to purchase, right? So keep that in mind. Is you have to do your due diligence. You have to be reaching out beforehand to figure out the properties that you want to show that your buyers are able, or they're enabled to buy or purchase. Other than that, you guys, it's really about leading your clients down the path that you have set for them. I'm going to reiterate that over and over because you are the expert. You're going to be the one telling them exactly what they need to do, what they need to sign, why they need to sign it, and the biggest, most important part, why that is in their best interest. Because obviously, having people sign stuff that isn't in their best interest is when things get hairy, things get sticky. But when you present it to them in a way that they completely understand that it is beneficial to them and legally required to do, they have no problem with it. I'm telling you guys, 15 plus years now doing this, people don't have a problem with it. 99% of the time, they fight for you. They work with you. They want you to be paid fairly. And that's how I've always presented it, right? I just want to make sure that I'm getting paid the same or fair to what the other agent is, because I'm going to do just as much work for you as that agent is doing. Yeah, we're fighting against each other, but we're also working together to get you your home. That's what you want, right? Yes, great. So
Hey, Cam,
again, go ahead,
great
Pete.
stuff. Let me ask you a quick question, or I'm going to open this question up, all right, to everyone here. So Ben asked a really good question. Say you have a signed contract with a buyer, they go and look at a listing that they love, they fall in love with the house, and the seller's offering no concessions. You write it into the offer, and they say, nope, we're not going to pay any concessions to the buyer in any way. What does that conversation look like with the buyer on the backside of that happening?
Do you mind if I touch on this one first, and then we can open it up? Because I've had that experience
You're on fire.
dozens and
Go
dozens
ahead.
of times. Yeah, okay. So that's a great question, Pete, is that when you submit an offer to a seller that isn't offering the full compensation that's in your buyer broker agreement, how then do you go to your seller and have that conversation? Really simple. And this is very, it's going to blow your guys' minds when you hear it, right? This is the option.
The conversation with the buyer. So
with the buyer, right? Our client, how do we tell them that they have to either pay us out of their pockets, or how do we structure the contract so they don't have to pay us out of their pockets and the seller still gets what they feel like they owed or what they want for their home? Two options, right?
Sure.
This is what I've done in the past, and this is what has worked exceptionally well for me. So I want you to try this all if you come into this situation. I want you to sit down with your buyer and say, we have two options, right? The seller says they're going to accept this amount of money, but they're not offering any concessions for commission, or for not for commission, I'm sorry, for professional fees, okay? What I recommend we do is, if that is the case and we want to offer them this amount with our fees put in, let's make that exact same offer minus the professional fees that we wanted and present that. Well, hold on, how do I get paid then, right? Well, at the same time, what I'm going to talk with my buyers about is, because I want to be paid fairly and I want to be, paid what I believe I'm owed. Here's what I also want to do. I want to create two offers that we're going to present at the same time, that the seller gets the exact same amount of money. Okay. I want to present these same offers at the exact same time and explain to the listing agent why they're getting two offers instead of just one. The numbers come out exactly the same, except for net bottom line for the seller, they come out the same, but the sale amount will actually be higher on the one that includes the commissions to the buyer's agent, right? And they'll go, yep, I'm talking to my buyers still here. Yep, great. Now, for most sellers, they have a little bit of an ego. They love their home, right? Yep. Aggressive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present this to the seller, and I'm going to tell the seller that the advantage they're getting here is that we're going to have a smoother closing. We're going to be able to go through the inspections quicker. We're going to be a little more lenient because they're not having to come out of pocket all of those things that they might have to fix and repair afterwards because the commission's being paid for through the transactions being financed in, right? So you're saving a little bit of money, that upfront money, and the seller at the end of the day ends up at the same net bottom line. Do you have a problem with me writing up and presenting these two contracts for you? 99.9% of the time, I've never had a problem with that. Is it going to
cost me any more money? Is it going to cost me extra money by doing that? It won't raise my taxes or anything?
So absolutely. And I would break it down with him. Great question, Pete. So I'd answer that. Pete, great question. Raising your taxes. Now we're talking about let's talk about our average price point here is $850. Let's break that down. We're talking about a $500,000 home. Commissions on that are going to be 15 grand. Taxes over 30 years on 15 grand. Yeah, that could definitely raise your money. Probably talking about maybe a dollar a month, maybe that 15 grand over 30 years. So there is possibilities that there could be some slight cost adjustments. The difference is, and again, buyer, I'd be totally happy doing this. We can close at the lower amount and you're going to have those benefits, but then so that I can get paid fairly, we'd have to pay that in addition and at the time of closing for the concessions or the professional fees. It's up to you. Remember, whatever you want to do, I'm on your side. I'm fighting for you. That's totally okay if you want to do the smaller sales amount and then pay the fees out, at the time of closing outside of the sale. Whatever you want to do, Pete, it's good for me. I'm just trying to get it, buddy, so that you get the best deal you can. And I'm making sure that the seller isn't taking advantage of us, because I don't want them to pocket that 3%, right? That's what they're trying to do. You know it. They're trying to pocket that 3%. And then make you pay it. So you actually ended up paying 6%. So whatever you want to do, Pete, we can work with it. We can do it together. But I want you to know that if we bring it into the contract and we present those two contracts to them, the seller's going to see that net bottom line, they're going to get the same amount. One's less, one's more. But at the end of the day, they get the same amount. And you're not having to pay that out of pocket. You're able to finance that in, just like we've been doing for the past 20 years. It works really well. So that is my conversation that I have with my buyers is it's simple. We just raise the price up or we lower it down depending on if they're paying the professional fees or not. It is,
the
I
other
think I see
point
a
I
couple
would make
questions.
too, you guys, another angle, another point I would make is, you know, if you are responsible for the professional fees, let's say the seller will not go down in price, they don't want to add the professional fees in because they're concerned about appraisals and so forth. Keep in mind, and you know, this is a little bit out of my professional scope. You'd have to discuss this with your accountant, but any professional fees you pay up front at closing as closing costs, those are all tax deductible. So you're going to write all that off as part of the commission, just like your closing costs. And that's going to benefit you in a lot of different ways on your taxes. So it really comes down to how we kind of organize and facilitate this thing to get you what you want. You know, I think that's the big thing is you have to go back to what they want. If they want the house, then we're going to have some limitations on what we can do, but here are the different options. Always give options and then move on from there. Does anybody else want to take that question on, or does anybody else have a different angle on that?
I think what Cameron said is a perfect way to do it, submitting 2 offers. And the other thing that everybody, I think, something to note is, you know, there really will never be a scenario where you will need to call a listing agent and say, hey, what is the seller offering out? Because it makes absolutely no difference. It really doesn't even make a difference if they say they're not offering out anything, because you can still submit an offer and ask for whatever you have on your buyer agreement, right? So it makes absolutely no difference if they're what they're offering out. And at least on our MLS here in San Diego, the only thing it's going to say on the MLS is either a yes or no question if the seller is willing to consider offering out a concession, period. And on our new listing agreement, which EXP put out, it doesn't even ask that yes or no question. Right. So it's kind of interesting.
And so
there really will never be a scenario where you'll have to
and the good point that Matt made,
what are they paying out?
Yeah. And that good point that Matt just made right there is we're kind of the leader, you guys. I don't know if you've been watching all the publicity and reading all the trade magazines and so forth, realtor.com or getting it on social, is EXP has been the leader in the forms moving forward, you know, the listing forms and the buyer forms. So I think that's really important to understand those, and that, you know, certain things are taken out that don't put you in that predicament. But let's get back to the buyer presentation. I want to go out to the desert to Ross, the buyer boss Stout. He's out there. He deals with a lot of buyers, you guys. He has a big Zillow account just like Dave Lawson does. So I'm really fascinated on how he's going to be dealing with these conversations from that standpoint. And I know that Zillow adopted what EXP put out for the buyer contracts. I know that for a fact. So Ross, what's going to be your process with Zillow leads or leads coming in from the internet? How are you articulating your value to get the contract signed prior to bringing those people out to see property?
Awesome. I can't wait to touch. I just want to say this first. I love being part of companies that are massive disruptors like EXP, like Zillow. I'm just like getting my popcorn and reading through Facebook posts. Like, people are losing their minds about what's coming down the pike. And they're like, EXP sucks, Zillow's the worst, get away from all of them. And I'm just like, this is so great. And I love being part of the disruptor community, because that's what causes change, right? And here we are at a change point, and everyone's kicking against the goads, and here we are leading the way, paving the best ways for our clients. That's why we'll continually be industry leaders. But when it comes to the buyer presentation, there's going to be 2 ways that you can do, or 2 scenarios. There's going to be your sphere of influence, which is somebody that you're familiar with, and this becomes a much easier compensation because they're going to be in your corner already. They're already wanting to work with you, and they're going to be, you know, any offer they put in, they're like, these sellers aren't going to pay you. Like, I'm not going to buy their house now. I got a sour taste in my mouth. They're the ones that this is an easy document to review. It's a great process. They're already in your corner, and that becomes a much easier presentation. But let's talk about when you don't know the person, right? So right now, like Pete mentioned, I do have a large Zillow account, so we're meeting new people multiple times a day. And what we've adopted is what's called a touring agreement. And so this kind of eliminates for me that awkward conversation at the front door. They've already digitally signed a 7-day non-exclusive tour agreement with our team, or with a particular agent, which doesn't have any compensation, but it does start the conditioning process of we've signed a document to see a house. So it's a little seed planted. We don't have that awkward moment before the showing. We can meet them directly at the property and have this tour with no problem. So that actually goes out after we've had our first call. And when we're on our first call, we schedule 2 appointments. So first we tell them, hey, you're going to be getting a tour agreement. This is what it looks like. It's a 7-day non-exclusive. This allows us to enter properties legally with the new NAR settlement. Oh, you haven't heard about the new NAR settlement? Well, this is just going to bring more transparency. And when we meet later today at our second appointment, I'll tell you more about the transparency that this is bringing. So then we schedule the appointment for the house. And then afterwards, after we get through, our probing questions and understanding what the buyer is looking for, we're able to then say, hey, do you have 15 minutes after the showing? And hopefully we can schedule the showing so we're at a vacant house so we can just hang out in the kitchen, go over the buyer agreement last. But if not, schedule an appointment at a Starbucks, all the crash joints that Cam mentioned, and you can head right in there and start your presentation. And the way I like to do it is I like to keep it simple. So I'm going to have a full buyer packet with me. I'm going to be able to articulate my value. But what I really want to do first is just broach the subject as there's 3 contracts that are going to get us into a transaction. And the ultimate goal of what we're doing is to get you into your house, into the property that you want for the best terms. And the best terms don't mean just the best price. We're going to get you the best price. We're going to save you money on your closing costs, and we're actually going to save you money on your interest rate with your loan. So those are the 3 things. We've already set the value. These are our goals to get you to a house and get you excellent terms. So then the 3 contracts that go into this is 1, there is a listing agreement, and that is between the listing agent and the seller. And that's what brings a property to the market. 2, there's a buyer agreement, and that's what we're talking about right now. This is me giving you full representation, and we'll get to that in just a second. And then the 3rd one is the purchase agreement. This is the offer we're going to write, and we're going to submit it to the seller. We're mutually going to sign it, and that'll constitute our transaction, which will get you to the end goal of you purchasing your next dream house. So do you have any questions on those? No, let's see it. Okay, cool. Here's the buyer representation agreement, and I've chosen to use the EXP buyer broker agreement for my team. It's a 1-pager. There's no disclosures attached to it. It's very straightforward. And there's only 2 items that you need to discuss there. It's length of term. How long do you think it will take for us to find you your dream house? Well, I don't know. Like, I'm looking for a second home. It's just the right property. Okay, great. Do you think 6 months is enough time for us to get? Well, I hope it's within 6 months. My pre-approval is up in 90 days. That's excellent. So why don't we make it for 6 months? And then when it comes down to here, item number 6, there's the percentage for my commission here. 3% is market standard. That's what I've put here. But it's my duty to get it paid for by the seller. And then right below it in a grayed out form, the EXP form lays out that we can have it all paid for by the seller. So I'm going to encourage them that it's my job to fight for my fee. I know you want me to get paid because I'm going to do an excellent job for you. You've already met me. You've seen that I know what you want after our first conversation and our interactions of the first homes you had. Do you have any questions? Most of the time, they're going to sign right there and be all for it. But then if they want to probe a little more, you have the deflection to say, well, we just need to get this done because of the NAR settlement. Here's the transparency issue. Now you get to see what I'm getting paid through the whole transaction. This is completely negotiable the whole time. I can't go up, but I can go down. I'm not going to let my commission get in the way of your real estate goals. And that's the front end of it. And then if they want to know about me more, I have a whole buyer packet telling them how great I am. My agents have the ability to tell them how great they are with, bios, with the reviews, our systems, what a transaction looks like. And I'm willing to take an hour to get them to sign it today because, like you guys have all been saying, a qualified buyer is money in the bank. And then the last thing we talk about is financing. So let's say they didn't like the homes that we saw today and they need to keep looking. Okay, if you loved one of these homes, how do you plan to finance it? Would it be cash? Would you be receiving a loan? Most people are say, you know what, I need a loan, but I have a guy, I haven't talked to him yet. And that's when I can broach the subject. We have a lender, ZHL, that'll actually beat any rate. That is their pitch. They will beat any rate. So now I can live up to my promise of we're going to save you money on your interest rate too. So why don't you pin them up against Rocket Mortgage or Guild or Modern Lending, whoever it is, pin them up against them. And if you want your guy to do your loan, get an LE, a loan estimate from ZHL, take it over to them, get that interest rate down. So not only are we just working on finding them a house or being that Uber driver, we are working on all aspects of their transaction to make it seamless, to save them money, and for them to walk away asking, so when does the hard part come? Because we made it so easy for them. So that's all explained on the front end. That's in our that's our presentation essentially. I like simplifying on the front end, saying the contracts are necessary to move forward and get you into your house. And so far, that's been working really well for us. We implemented that last month.
Yeah, I think that's great stuff. And I like the ease that you do it with. It's very non-threatening, and it doesn't show a giant commitment when you sign that touring contract. But I like how you propose that verbiage of that this is what's necessary to get you into your house. And it's not just the house we're looking at for you, but also your financing, your appraisal, your moving costs, everything that is associated with the house. And I was laughing because Cam basically said for all the things that we do, and it's finally going to come to the surface where it's going to be transparent and the consumers are going to see it, we should be putting down 5% on the commission buyer's broker,
yeah. I've actually
on the buyer broker agreement.
EXP has that single property, and I've been like kind of weaponizing that against sellers, because if you show a buyer that house and they're like, I want this house, we actually have a single property in the back of our buyer packet. So just in case, and it's been sitting on the market 200 days and they want to be aggressive with it, then I have been coaching where don't you at 5% on that single property, and go after that, and because you can always go down from there. But if these people are desperate, like this is your opportunity to get paid for all the ones that you've missed, right? Or all the struggles you're going to be going through.
And just remember, you guys, if it's not on the initial agreement, you can't ask for more than what's on that initial agreement. Yep. So yep. If a seller does say, hey, we'll work with the buyers in offering a professional concession up to 5%, and you only have 2.5% on your buyer broker agreement, then you cannot take advantage of that 5%. You would only be able to cap out at 2.5%. So keep that in mind and explain that to people. I mean, the other great tip that I can give everyone also, and most people are familiar that in the past, you could roll in up to 6% of closing costs, right? Recurring and non-recurring. The great thing is that, the professional fees do not count towards that 6%. Mm-hmm. They've separated those. So that's kind of a victory for realtors. And I don't know if people are really familiar with that. Go ahead, Cam.
One last thing. Cam. I know we're written real close on time. We got a lot of superstars here I want to listen to. But one other thing is, remember too, you guys, we're not always negotiating against a single person owning a home. Lots of times we're going to Lennar, which is an $8 billion company. You guys, think of that. Come on. We're not always negotiating against grandma. So keep that in mind.
Right. Exactly right.
I love that. That's great. Before I get on to Brian, and then I'm going to go to Bridget, then Dave, because we have the rose in between all the thorns, and that's Bridget Young. There were a couple questions on here, and I just want to put it out there. So if anybody has any feedback on this, but a lot of people are saying, so what happens if the appraisal comes in short? Does everything just adjust if it's already been worked out ahead of time? And then how is everything policed? Ron Rank had a good question. He said, Pete, how is that policed? So how is it policed based on the contractual agreement that you have with your buyers, who sees that and how is that policed? I'm assuming it's policed through the brokerage and through the settlement sheet, because I'm sure you have to turn in that form on SkySlope where they're making sure that the form aligns with the professional fees that are on the settlement sheet. That's my understanding of it. Does anybody else have any input on that?
That's a great question.
So we'll put that one aside. Maybe we'll direct that next week. You guys let us find the answers to that, and then we'll go from there. Let's go out to Brian Yarber. He just returned from fishing up in Montana. He looks great. He had his share of fish. Now he's going to be fishing for buyers and sellers in this new pond. So, Brian, how are you doing your buyer presentation to the new buyers that are coming up? And how are you explaining how the professional fees are going to be working?
Great question. Thanks, Pete. And well, I loved what Ross said. I loved what Cam said. I think the version that I have prepared for is really what I've been doing for almost 40 years. You know, we used to, when you had an offer on a house, you used to sit in front of the seller. Some of you know this. You used to take the offer with you and go and present the seller your buyer's offer in person across the table. And next to the seller,
that'll come back, Brian. Brian, I think that'll come back.
Yeah, it will. And so I'm used to that. I'm used to presenting hard for my client in front of the listing agent, in front of the seller, and fighting for my commission at a table. And so what happened was we lost the interaction. Today, we're doing everything digitally. So there's no value that you really give the buyer when you just email over an offer. You have to be able to email the offer over with a lot of things in front of that and a lot of the work. So like Ross was saying and Cameron was saying, there's a lot of work that goes into presenting an offer. If you do it successfully and you're going to win the offer, that's the goal, is to win the property. Regarding EXP, and what Ross said was amazing. So if you haven't seen it yet, they did come out with a showing form. That's really what this is. It's just a document for setting up showings. And your presentation with the buyers should be very relaxed in the fact that we don't know what house they're going to buy. We just know that they have houses they want to see. And this is the way we get, just like PED during COVID, we had a PED form. I had a whole bunch of listings during COVID. I had people sending me PED forms. Did I monitor them? No. Did I save them? Yes. Did the lockbox get used? And did I have a PED form in the file? That was pretty much it. So they came in and that was it. This form though, if you start to look at it, there's other things in there that are really for you and I. So if you're a buyer's agent, what do you want from your buyer before you get in your car and waste your Saturday afternoon and your gas and your time and miss appointments because you're all of a sudden showing? I want to know that my buyer is fully qualified. I want to know that they're fully engaged in me actually wanting to even spend time with them. So part of the presentation, if you're a Zillow agent and you're doing what Ross said, you know, they have a process. But when you've got to drive 40 minutes to a property and meet somebody you've never met before, do you really want to do that without knowing a few more things about them? So I strongly suggest that what you do is you really try to set up buyer presentations for everything that you want to know about the client, but use the seller as the reason you want to know everything. So the seller's going to want to know you're pre-approved, you're fully approved. Do you have proof of funds, and do you have a letter from your lender? If you don't have that, really, it's going to be hard for me to get the door open on properties. Let me have all those documents before we go out and look, right? So the trust level is, where are these buyers on a scale of 1 to 10, and you let them actually score themselves. Hey guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed to this process are you? Because if they don't give themselves a 10, that's great. I don't want to waste gas on somebody who says, I'm a 7. Good. Well, let's talk about why you're a 7. And like you said, Pete, SkySlope in every state is going to give you what you need. But we have a broker. If you have this one document that our broker is asking us to have, you're good. You don't have to go real deep into the weeds. And what Matt was saying earlier, I actually was in the early 2000s. There was a car form, and again, this was California. There was a document that I used on a home that was $7 million that was offering a 2% commission to the buyer's agent. Before I showed it and wrote an offer, I politely sent over to the listing agent a document that just said, hey, my buyer doesn't come around every day. If my clients love your property, would you ask your seller not to change the MLS, not to change the listing compensation, not to change anything, but would they agree to pay me a 3% commission if I represent the buyer for their home? Just a private document between me and you and your broker and my broker. And you know what? I got that. That seller said, yeah, absolutely. I'll pay you 3% if you sell my $7 million house. Well, I ended up selling it for 6.2. And I got a 3% commission rather than a 2%. So that document has actually always been there. Just nobody's ever paid attention to it. So today what we have is a modified document that allows you to, ahead of time, reach out to the listing agent if you know them. Hey, Dave, I see your new listing on 123 Johnson Street. I got a really excited buyer to go see that. Let me ask you, is your seller offering a compensation? No. Okay, great. Let me ask you this. If my client who really loves it comes to the table with a really good offer, could you ask your seller if it's okay that in my offer presentation, I do ask for a commission? And in the response, in the counter offer, I would expect a counter offer price that my buyer has to stare at that already has included my compensation. Are you good with that? Can I send that over? If not, in California, and some of you guys in other states, you'll know this, our offer already has a place to check the box. I can show the buyer who I have an agreement with privately that, hey, I don't know where you're going to buy a home. I don't know where my compensation is going to come from, but I'm going to fight hard because look at this box in our offer. I'm going to check this box every time. This box says I'm going to fight for my commission from the seller in the presentation. And I'm going to leave it with that because I know we have some other people that are going to go, but this is the trust level that we need to have with the client before we go out and actually do what we're going to do for them. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, and I like how you articulate it, Brian. I think you do a really good job about taking the fear out of it and making it very simplified. Let's go over to Dave Luxury Lawson, the man, the myth, the legend out there in Park City. Dave has done thousands of buyer consultations. Dave, what is going to be you and your team's presentations when it comes to buyers, kind of in this new era of brokerage relationships that we're going into?
Well, the thing is, there's 10,000 properties in Park City and we've sold 3,520, right? So we have some experience. So I'm breaking it down. So I sort of have two buckets of clients, right? We have our Zillow and our Realtor.com clients, just like Russ does. And in those, whenever that happens, we're doing, and I like what Cam said, we have a policy, one free showing. We'll show you houses one time for free. And so in that case, we are doing a touring agreement. And we're putting together a touring agreement that I'm hopeful next week I can share. They're making a few changes with it, but I love it. It's very simple. And basically it says, right now you don't have to pay me anything, but you have to sign a document saying that I can open the house. And we just trained that this morning with our team, and they're really excited about it. Then we have our past clients and our SOI and all that, and they want to see something. We're not doing a touring agreement with them. We're going straight to buyer agent or a buyer broker agreement. The next thing is, and we've heard this, but I truly, you guys are probably not going to like to hear this, or maybe you will, but I think this is the greatest opportunity for the best agents, but everybody has to ask themselves a question. Are you going to let these changes take you out or take you to the top? Right? I think 90% of the agents are just going to struggle with this so bad that it's going to allow all of us that are going to deal with this and do it. We're going to win. We're going to take over market share. And then the other thing is I truly believe that we get compensated in direct proportion to the value that we offer to our clients. And when I saw this, I thought we were going to be talking about buyers' presentations. So you know, if you're a good agent, everybody has a listing, or if you don't have a listing presentation, or I call a listing consultation, you're making a big mistake. But you have to have also in this new world, you have to have a buyer's presentation. And what a buyer's presentation does is it gives you an opportunity to kind of brag about yourself, talk to them about what it is and what the process is. And so we spent, since this came up, we spent a couple months or longer to update it. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to share this really fast.
Love it.
So here we go. Um, so are you guys seeing Finding Your Dream Property? So,
Yep.
Yes.
good. So in here,
Go to the
everybody,
right. You
yeah.
can flip the.
So yeah, I had to get rid of the picture, everybody. So really quickly, I'm not going to do this, but I'm gonna put a link in, and everybody's going to get a copy of this. But so when you're talking to people, you say, can I share a little about the team, right? So why would you lose or use the team? What's our commitment to you? Look at the first page. What is it? It's understanding buyer representation. And I don't want to go through the whole thing, and I'm going to give this to everybody in the link as soon as I'm done. But it talks about how we're compensated. Then it shows the whole buying process, right? Of determining your goals, pre-approval, home search, writing an offer, due diligence, financing, and final steps. Then we talk about determining their goals. Then we talk about the pre-approval process and a lender. And we, just like Russ has, we've got an incredible lender that he's so good. He gets deals done and he's super competitive. Um, and then it talks about the do's and don'ts of financing. Obviously, don't go buy a new boat and a new car when you're in whatever. So we're giving a little information. Then guiding your search, how to finding the right property. And here's one that we go over a lot. If you go to an open house, or if you go to a for sale by owner, or you go to new construction, or you're using other websites, then we want them always to know to call, talk to us. And in the agreement, when we're getting it signed, we're telling them this is what we're going to do for you. But if you're going to go to open houses, you have to do one or two things. You've got to show them when you show up, you got to show them or tell them you're working with an agent and show the buyer broker agreement. Or better yet, we're just going to show you the house. So this is how we're stopping people from working for a while and then calling you up and saying, Matt, you're going to be so excited for me. I went into a house and I bought it at new construction with Lennar Homes. Right? So that's going to get away with it. And you want to know my big secret? It's right here. Quiet sell and off market. This is the number one thing that we use at the Lawson team to get potential buyers to use us. And first of all, every one of you need to have one of these. Every one of you need to name it. So it's the Stout Team Quiet Sell and Off Market Program. It's the Pete Knows Real Estate. It's the Badiaga quiet sale and off market, because when you name something, it has a bunch of value. And I'm not going to show you or tell you exactly what we do, but basically in a nutshell, we just tell people we go way above. We're going to look at old and new expireds, withdrawn, canceled, for sale by owners, for rent by owners. We're going to knock on doors or write letters into the neighborhood. We're going to ask people. We're going to ask other blah, 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 right? And that's what we do. And by the way, if you can't sleep at night, go look at our 600 five-star reviews on Zillow And you're going to see that people hire us because of the things we do different and extra. Is that something that you'd be interested in? And they say yes, and great. Now you've got them. The next, we talk about starting the offer, due diligence. We have a QR code down here where they can scan this and get the buyer's due diligence information. It's super helpful. Financing and appraisal, final steps. Then here we're bragging without trying to brag. And then we talk a little bit about our reviews. So
Excellent.
In a nutshell, if you put all these things together, this is going to be a massive win for all of us. And the thing is in Salt Lake, there's a lot of listings that are at 2%. And I believe that all of us are going, because from now on, we're going to be we're going to be charging, as you all know, you can charge anything you want, 2, 3, 4. I like Russ charging 5%. And if you have it, so we're going to be able to negotiate. And then one last thing I wanted to say is if you do 2 offers or you're talking to people, the seller, you can say, this process is going to go way better if the professional fees for me as a buyer's agent is included, because the buyer, it's going to help the buyer's ratios. It's going to help the lender. It's going to help us get to the finish line. Potential buyers may not qualify. And think about it, gang. When you're buying a house, what are you doing? You had to save up for the down payment. Then you have to have money to move. You have to pay money. You've got all your closing costs and your lender fees and all of that. And if you throw on professional fees, it's going to put people out of the market. So anyway,
we got like a minute left, and I was
one minute left. I just want to say, I want you all to think this is the biggest blessing that we've had in the real estate business. Thanks.
That's awesome, Dave. Great presentation. Please drop it in the chat. Bridget, the rose amongst all the thorns. We're going to end with you. We're going to start with you next week, because I know we're going to have a part 2 on this, where I think we should do role playing and how to articulate the value and handle objections and so forth. I think that goes hand in hand with the presentation. What did you want to add? I know you work in both fields. You work in commercial and you work in residential.
Yeah.
So give us your input on how you see.
Don't panic.
Buyer agreement.
Don't panic. Number one, you shouldn't even feel awkward. You need a presentation like Dave. I was going to outline some points, but mic drop Dave just blew us all away again, like he always does. Amazing, Dave. This is the way it is in commercial. It should not be awkward. It's basically the law now. It has to get done. You do need to present your value, but be comfortable in your own skin doing it, because everybody's got to do it. And with commercial, this is just the way it is. You find a property, you write an offer, and you write in your commission right in the offer. And I think sellers, yeah, they're excited about negotiating, but they'll be crazy not to be expecting to pay commission still, because many buyers just can't afford to pay the commission. They don't have the extra 3%, right? So it'll all work itself out. Everybody will be normal. And this is the way it is in commercial anyway. So, and it's the way it used to be. And I think it was in 96 that they just started putting the commission into MLS. Prior to that, it wasn't there. So don't panic. And everybody, like, I was taking notes incredibly today, because everybody brought so much value to this call. It was amazing. So I'm just glad that we're all here together navigating this. I will tell you this, is it already, it's 10:01, so we'll go. But you guys were not lying when you're talking about all the news and how EXP is a leader in creating these new documents and the community embracing it. So know that you're in the right place at the right time, and look at this as an exciting time, and just be ready to forge through. And again, don't panic, be comfortable. This is the new norm, and just be ready to lead your people.
Awesome. I love that. We'll end on that. You guys will pick up part 2, or otherwise known as Cameron would say, part 2, next Thursday, where we'll handle objections and do some role playing. So if you have any questions, get on early and put it in the chat, and we'll go from there. Okay.
I would like to make sure that everybody on this call has all the new forms that EXP has created. My TC emailed them to me. But do we want to advise anybody where is the best place to get them?
Well, the tough part is, look, in EXP created a seller's toolkit and a buyer's toolkit, but the issue is every state is different. We have people on here from everywhere. Different states. So I think you have to get your forms in the state that you're in.
Yeah. And so go into probably marketing, right? Is where I found mine's buyer's toolkit and seller toolkit. So yep. I do have them, but everybody needs to grab those forms, look at them, and then see what your broker in each state recommends.
Love it. Okay, guys, we're going to end on that. Thank you for everyone being on, and invite some of your friends, because whether you like it or not, this transition's happening on August 17th. So it's better to be informed and be proactive on what your pitch is going to be, how you're going to articulate it, and what your system is going to be. You know, we have the tools, we can supply them to you, but I want you to invite anyone and everyone you know. It doesn't matter what brokerage they're in. We're not, this is very brand agnostic. We are going to share everything with everyone that we have, because we want people to thrive and survive. All right. So if you have any questions, let me know. But thank you for everybody for putting your heart and soul in this week and really sharing what you're doing. It's been a great one. Thanks, guys. Have a great, positive weekend. Go out and sell some properties.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Okay.
See you guys. Thanks.
See you guys. Great.